Welcome to Anomalum Chronicles, brave souls, your gateway to the realm of spine-tingling horror stories. If you have an insatiable thirst for the mysterious, the supernatural, and the downright hair-raising, you've just stumbled upon your new favorite channel. Prepare to be captivated by tales that defy reason and send chills racing down your spine. From haunted houses that whisper secrets of the past to encounters with the unknown that defy explanation, we are your storytellers in this twisted journey through the dark and enigmatic. Join our growing community of fearless explorers, horror aficionados, or just curious minds as we embark on a relentless quest to unravel the most unsettling mysteries. But beware, for the stories we share will linger long after you've watched them, leaving you questioning the very fabric of reality. Venture forth with us if you dare into the shadowy depths of the unknown. Welcome to Anomalum Chronicles, where fear has a new name. In the pre-dawn hours, Seawatch slumbered beneath a shroud of mist, its jagged cliffs casting long, eerie shadows onto the tumultuous sea below. A solitary figure stood sentinel atop the Seawatch lighthouse, a tall, weathered structure that loomed over the village. The lighthouse keeper, Samuel Graves, leaned against the iron railing, his eyes fixed on the restless waters stretching out to infinity. His hands gripped the railing, calloused and steady, as if holding on to the last vestiges of his own sanity. A relentless and brooding titan clawed at the base of the cliffs with an insatiable hunger. Waves crashed against the rocks, sending plumes of salt water into the air. The rhythmic percussion of the waves, like a mournful dirge, echoed through the village, a constant reminder of nature's boundless power. Seawatch, a forgotten hamlet trapped in a bygone era, cowered on the precipice of oblivion. The villagers, a superstitious lot, knew the sea as both their lifeblood and their tormentor. They lived in fear of the endless, churning waters that had claimed their loved ones, and the oppressive silence that wrapped itself around the village like a shroud. But Samuel was different. He embraced the solitude, his stoic demeanor, a reflection of his unspoken understanding of Seawatch's dark secret. His motivation was forged from the ashes of a tragic past, the memory of a family consumed by the unforgiving sea. He had willingly become the lighthouse keeper, drawn to the relentless duty of keeping the beacon burning, as if it were a fragile line of defense against ancient, unseen horrors lurking beneath the waves. The lighthouse itself stood as a sentinel of the unknown. Its tall, weathered walls bore the scars of countless storms, its lantern room perched like a crown upon its tower. The beam of light it emitted pierced through the inky darkness, offering a feeble promise of hope to passing ships, those few that dared to approach the accursed coast. As Samuel gazed out at the sea, his thoughts meandered through the labyrinth of his own solitude. He had long accepted the quietude that enveloped him, finding solace in the simple rituals of his work. The ascent to the lantern room, the careful maintenance of the lamp's flame, the rhythmic turning of the gears. It was his own form of meditation, yet for all his stoicism, Samuel could not escape the sense of foreboding that clung to Seawatch like a curse. The eerie silence, broken only by the distant cries of gulls, weighed upon him like a heavy mantle. It was a silence that held secrets, dark and ancient secrets that whispered in the night, promising to reveal themselves when the time was ripe. And Samuel, the solitary keeper of the beacon, knew that time was drawing near. The muted sun dipped below the jagged horizon, casting long shadows across the cliffs of Seawatch. It was a somber twilight that mirrored the depths of my own past. I stood at the helm of the Seawatch lighthouse, my silhouette etched against the fading light. My weathered hands gripped the iron railing as the relentless wind tugged at my coat, whispering secrets of an unforgiving sea. The lighthouse, my sanctuary, stood tall and stoic, its aged stones bearing witness to the countless souls claimed by the tumultuous waters below. The cries of gulls above seemed distant, their mournful calls carried away by the restless winds. But it was the eerie silence that clung to the village like a shroud, a silence that masked the tragedies, that sent shivers down my spine. The night had stolen my family, my laughter, and my innocence. The sea, with its voracious appetite, had engulfed my parents and siblings, leaving me alone in the world. Their names and faces had faded with time, obscured by the ceaseless wave. All that remained were the echoes of their laughter, lingering like haunting specters in the chambers of my memory. With each mournful gust of wind, I could almost hear their voices calling to me, as if the sea itself whispered their names. It was this grief that had led me to the solitude of the lighthouse, an exiled existence where I sought solace and penance. An existence where the relentless rhythm of my duties matched the relentless nature of the sea. As I tended to the ever-watchful beacon, my mind wandered back to that fateful night, a night like any other until it wasn't. The storm had raged with a fury beyond reckoning, waves crashing against the cliffs with a thunderous roar. My family, huddled together in our small cottage, had clung to the hope that the lighthouse would guide the way to safety. But hope was a fragile thing in Seawatch. The cries of the wind had been deafening, drowning out our feeble attempts at conversation. Rain hammered against the windows like a desperate plea. I had watched as the lighthouse's beam cut through the darkness, a beacon of salvation. But then, in an instant, it was gone. The sea had claimed the light, and in its absence, despair had crept. I had tried to hold on, to keep their memory alive, but it was a struggle against an unfeeling, uncaring sea. Their faces had faded, their laughter silenced, replaced only by the echoes of tragedy. And in the years that followed, Seawatch claimed more souls, each one lost to the relentless depths. It was not until the disappearances began, the eerie silence amplifying their absence, that I realized the true horror of Seawatch. The sea was not the only malevolent force at play. Something darker lurked beneath the waves. The silent fate, they whispered in hushed tones, an eldritch presence that craved the souls of Seawatch's inhabitants. As I stood there atop the lighthouse, I knew that my duty was not just to keep the beacon burning, but to confront the horrors that threatened to claim us all. My past was a shadow that clung to me, but it was the future of Seawatch that now hung in the balance, and I would face it with the stoicism of a man who had already lost everything. The night settled in, and the stars began to pierce the darkness like pinpricks of hope. But in Seawatch, hope was a fragile thing, easily extinguished by the relentless sea and the haunting echoes of tragedy that lingered in the silence. The moon hung like a ghostly lantern in the starless sky, casting a pallid glow over Seawatch as I ventured deeper into the heart of the village. The oppressive silence enveloped me like a shroud broken only by the haunting cries of distant gulls, their mournful voices carried on the cold sea breeze. With each passing day, the whispers of despair grew louder, like a chorus of lost souls. The villagers huddled in their homes, curtains drawn tight against the night, their faces etched with fear and resignation. They had seen their loved ones vanish, swallowed by the unyielding sea, their pleas for help silenced by an eerie force that defied comprehension. Too had heard the whispers, the tales of the silent fate. Superstition ran deep in Seawatch, and the name struck terror into the hearts of those who dared utter it. They spoke of an ancient, malevolent intelligence lurking beneath the waves, a force that craved the souls of Seawatch's inhabitants. Its motivations were as unfathomable as the abyss that surrounded us, and it used the relentless sea and the oppressive silence as its sinister tools. My own sleepless nights had been filled with research, delving into dusty tomes and cryptic manuscripts that spoke of eldritch horrors beyond mortal comprehension. Candlelight flickered and cast eerie shadows on the aged pages as I sought answers to our torment. The village's survival depended on uncovering the truth behind the silent fate, and I had become consumed by my obsession. It was a moonless night when I descended into the caverns beneath Seawatch, guided only by the flickering flame of a lantern. The walls of the narrow passages were slick with dampness, and the sound of dripping water echoed like melancholic whispers in the depths of my mind. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding clung to my every step. As I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move. I had heard tales of lost souls trapped within these subterranean catacombs, their anguished spirits forever bound to the village's dark history. Then, in the dim illumination of my lantern, I saw it, a sinister, ancient sigil etched into the stone. It was a symbol of power, of malevolence, and it filled me with a bone-chilling dread. The symbol had been used in the village's dark rituals, a desperate attempt to ward off the silent fate, but it had only served to beckon the darkness closer. My heart raced as I pressed on, deeper into the bowels of Seawatch. The oppressive silence was punctuated by the distant rumble of the sea, a reminder of the relentless force that sought to claim us all. I knew I was drawing closer to the heart of the mystery, closer to a confrontation with the silent fate itself. In that suffocating darkness, I had my first direct encounter with a malevolent force that plagued Seawatch. It manifested as a chilling presence, a sensation of icy fingers brushing against my skin. Whispers filled the cavern, an unintelligible symphony of despair, and I felt the weight of its gaze upon me. With a trembling hand, I raised my lantern, its feeble light casting long, wavering shadows that danced with the unearthly presence. "Who are you?" I whispered into the abyss, my voice barely a breath. The response was a bone-chilling silence that seemed to stretch into eternity. A silence that held the weight of countless lost souls and the unfathomable secrets of Seawatch. Each day in Seawatch brought a heavier pall of dread as the silent fate continued its relentless assault on our village. The whispers of our ancestors echoed in our ears, urging us to perform rituals and light bonfires to ward off the malevolent force that lurked beneath the waves. But despite our desperate efforts, the disappearances continued, and the eerie silence deepened. As the village's lighthouse keeper, I had become the reluctant guardian of Seawatch's fragile existence. With a heavy heart, I watched as the population dwindled, each loss etching a painful scar on our community. Families were torn apart, their cries swallowed by the uncaring sea. We clung to superstitions passed down through generations, for it was all we had left. On moonless nights, we gathered on the rocky shore, creating a mosaic of flickering torchlight that danced against the obsidian sea. We sang ancient songs, invoking the protection of long-forgotten gods, hoping to pierce the oppressive silence that hung over us like a shroud. Amidst the rituals, I delved deeper into the village's archives, poring over brittle parchment and deciphering cryptic symbols etched by long-dead scribes. The lore hinted at a connection between the lighthouse and this malevolent entity, suggesting that the beacon's light was a barrier, a fragile shield that held the silent fate at bay. It was a revelation that chilled me to the bone, for it meant that the fate of Seawatch rested heavily upon my weary shoulders. Each night, I ascended the narrow, winding staircase of the lighthouse with trepidation, tending to the ancient mechanism that powered the beacon. The sea's relentless assault on the cliffs below reverberated through the stone walls, a constant reminder of our fragile existence. With each turn of the mechanism, I felt the weight of our village's hopes and fears pressing down upon me. But it was during one moonless night, as I stood at the pinnacle of the lighthouse, that I had an epiphany. The eerie silence that had haunted Seawatch was not just the absence of sound. It was a manifestation of the silent fate itself, a silence that masked its sinister presence. It was a silence that defied the natural order of the world, a silence that stifled hope and amplified despair. In that moment, I knew that our struggle was not merely against a malevolent force from the depths, but against the very essence of silence itself. To protect Seawatch, I had to confront the silent fate and the oppressive silence it wielded. It was a realization that filled me with both dread and determination, for I understood that our salvation lay in breaking the silence that had shrouded us in darkness for so long. With newfound purpose, I descended from the lighthouse, my mind ablaze with a plan to confront our tormentor and to uncover the truth behind the silent fate. The rituals, the lore, and the lighthouse itself were all pieces of a puzzle that I needed to assemble to save Seawatch from the unending torment that had plagued us for generations. The lighthouse stood tall, its silhouette etched against the darkening sky. Its beacon, a solitary eye in the midst of the encroaching night, held within it the secrets of Seawatch. As I climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room, the sound of the sea below grew distant, replaced by the rhythmic, mechanical hum of the lighthouse machinery. I entered the lantern room, its glass walls encased in iron, allowing me an unobstructed view of the restless sea that surrounded us. The room was bathed in an eerie, ethereal glow as the lighthouse's beams sliced through the encroaching darkness. It was here, in this sanctum of solitude and secrets, that I would uncover the truth about Seawatch's torment. My hands trembled as I approached the heart of the lighthouse, a massive, intricately designed brass mechanism that housed the lighthouse's source of power and protection. It was not just a beacon. It was a guardian, a sentinel against the malevolent force that lurked beneath the waves. The brass mechanism revealed its secrets reluctantly, its gears and cogs clicking and turning as if whispering ancient incantations. The design was intricate, like a cryptic puzzle waiting to be deciphered. I studied the diagrams and notes left behind by the lighthouse keepers who had come before me, each one leaving their mark on this enigmatic contraption. As I delved deeper into the mechanism, I realized that it was a fusion of science and the occult, a marriage of human ingenuity and desperate superstition. It drew power from the very sea it guarded against, channeling the relentless waves into a spectral energy that kept the silent fate at bay. I followed the intricate network of pipes and conduits, my fingers tracing the symbols etched into the brass, symbols that were older than Seawatch itself, symbols that invoked both dread and reverence. They were sigils of protection, carved to ward off the eldritch malevolence that sought to claim our souls. And then, in the heart of the mechanism, I found it. A hidden chamber containing an ancient relic. It was a talisman, a piece of the abyssal unknown, encased in a glass sphere. The relic pulsed with an otherworldly energy, as if it held a piece of the sea's very soul. My heart quickened as I realized the truth. This relic was the linchpin, the conduit through which the lighthouse harnessed its power. It was also the key to sealing the malevolent force below. But as I gazed upon the relic, a feeling of dread washed over me. I understood the weight of my responsibility. To protect the village, I would have to make a choice that would forever alter the course of my life. I knew what had to be done, even as the relentless sea outside seemed to echo my uncertainty. With trembling hands, I reached for the relic, and the world around me seemed to hold its breath. The relentless sea roared with unholy fervor, its frothy fingers reaching up to claw at the jagged cliffs that loomed over Seawatch. The night was cast in an otherworldly hue, where the moon shone like a tarnished coin, and the stars, if they dared to appear, did so as mere pinpricks in the canvas of an endless abyss. The lighthouse, my sanctum and prison, stood tall against the malevolent tide, its beacon slicing through the obsidian shroud that clung to our village like a suffocating shroud. As I ascended the spiral staircase of the Seawatch lighthouse, each step felt heavier than the last. My footsteps echoed in the hollow chamber, a cacophony that mocked the eerie silence that had tormented us for so long. The lighthouse, once my sentinel of solitude, had become the epicenter of my descent into madness. The nightmares had become relentless, a tempest of horrors that tore through the fragile dam of my sanity. In restless slumber, I saw visions of villagers, their faces contorted in agony, dragged into the unforgiving depths by shadowy tendrils that oozed from the abyss. I awoke each morning in a cold sweat, my heart pounding as the echoes of their screams reverberated in my mind. The lighthouse's lamp room, bathed in an ethereal glow, awaited me like a confessional booth for the damned. The machinery hummed with a disconcerting rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat in sync with the very pulse of the village's torment. I approached the colossal lens, its refracted beams slicing the inky darkness. With trembling hands, I adjusted the focus, each motion an exercise in trepidation. I knew that to falter in my duties would mean surrender to the silent fate. The sea's fury raged on, a symphony of chaos and despair. The very air seemed to crackle with malevolence, as if the world itself conspired against me. The oppressive silence settled upon my shoulders like a leaden shroud, and I could hear it whispering, taunting, beckoning me toward madness. As the night wore on, I felt the boundaries between dream and wakefulness blur, as if I had become an unwilling resident of a twilight realm. The lines etched by reason and reality blurred, and I questioned my own existence. Had I become one with the lighthouse, a mere cog in a cosmic machine meant to appease the eldritch force below? With each passing hour, I clung to my dwindling sanity like a sailor to a life raft in a storm-tossed sea. The walls of the lamp room seemed to close in, their pale, peeling paint taking on grotesque forms in the flickering lamplight. Shadows danced and writhed, assuming the shapes of long-forgotten villagers and sea creatures that should never have seen the light of day. At the stroke of midnight, a deafening silence enveloped the lighthouse. The machinery ceased its infernal humming, and the refracted beams of light flickered and died. Panic seized me, and I fumbled for the lantern at my side, desperately trying to rekindle the beacon. But it was not the machinery that had failed. It was I who had faltered. In that moment, as the darkness closed in, I heard it, a whisper, a voice from the abyss. It spoke not in words, but in a chorus of tormented souls, a symphony of suffering that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. It was the voice of the silent fate, and it echoed with the despair of countless victims. I felt a presence, an unseen hand reaching out from the shadows, and I knew I was teetering on the precipice of oblivion. My mind, fractured and fragile, threatened to shatter completely. In the suffocating silence, I understood that to confront the silent fate was to risk my very soul. But the descent into madness had already begun, and I had no choice but to plunge deeper into the abyss, guided by the eldritch force that craved my very essence. The lighthouse, my solitary sanctuary, had become a prison, and I was a captive of the eerie silence, a willing servant of the silent fate. Unveiling the horror, the night was dark and tempestuous as I ascended the spiraling staircase of the Seawatch lighthouse. Each step, once a familiar friend, now seemed to conspire against me, creaking with a sinister glee, as if urging me to turn back. But there was no turning back. The ominous presence of the silent fate loomed like a specter over the village, and I had to confront the horror that had plagued Seawatch for generations. Reaching the lantern room, I faced the grand window that overlooked the churning sea. Rain pelted the glass, creating distorted and disconcerting patterns that danced like phantoms. I could hear the sea's furious roar, a cacophony of anger, as it battled against the lighthouse's unyielding frame. The oppressive silence that had gripped Seawatch had given way to the unrestrained fury of the tempest. With trembling hands, I ignited the beacon, its brilliant light piercing the darkness. The lighthouse's heartbeat, a rhythmic pulse, echoed through the chamber. I watched as the beam of light cut through the storm, a frail defiance against the malevolent force lurking below. It came, a presence that transcended the physical, an eldritch horror that seemed to seep through the very walls of the lighthouse. The air grew cold, and the lantern's flame flickered as if in protest. I felt it before I saw it. An ethereal, shadowy figure materializing in the center of the room. It was the silent fate. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat reverberating through my body like a funeral dirge. The entity, formless yet sentient, regarded me with eyes that were voids of unfathomable depth. It radiated an aura of malevolence so potent that it threatened to crush my will. "Why do you resist?" Its voice echoed in my mind, a chorus of countless tormented souls. "I am the destiny of Seawatch. The souls of the lost belong to me." Bearing every ounce of resolve, I faced the silent fate with defiance. "You are nothing but a parasite, a curse upon this village. I will not allow you to claim more innocent lives." The entity's form seemed to undulate, a grotesque dance of shadows. It reached out toward me, and I felt a frigid spectral touch against my skin, as if the very essence of death itself sought to consume me. But I was not alone in this battle. The lighthouse, a sentinel of hope, pulsed with a blinding radiance, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. In that blinding brilliance, I glimpsed the true nature of the silent fate. It was a malevolent force born of despair and isolation, a creature that thrived on the suffering of others. It was a reflection of the village's own darkest fears and regrets. With one final surge of determination, I channeled the lighthouse's power, sending forth a blinding, purifying wave of light. It enveloped the silent fate, its agonized wails echoing through the chamber as it dissipated into nothingness. So the storm outside raged on, but within the lantern room, a profound stillness settled. The malevolent force that had haunted Seawatch for generations had been banished. The lighthouse, a beacon of hope, stood strong against the relentless sea. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, I knew that Seawatch was forever changed. The sacrifices made and the horrors faced would forever haunt the village, but it was a price paid to protect the souls of the innocent. The eerie silence had lifted, replaced by the sound of crashing waves, a reminder of the village's enduring resilience. And so, in the aftermath of that fateful night, I stood alone in the lantern room, a solitary figure against the backdrop of an untamed sea, forever vigilant, for I knew that the darkness always lay in wait, just beyond the horizon. In the aftermath of our harrowing ordeal, Seawatch lay cloaked in a heavy silence, an eerie and stifling shroud that seemed more oppressive than ever before. The village had weathered the storm, but it bore the scars of our confrontation with the silent fate. I stood once more atop the Seawatch lighthouse, surveying the jagged cliffs and the turbulent sea that surrounded us. The waves, once relentless, had momentarily stilled, as if nature itself held its breath. The nightmarish events of the past weeks weighed heavily on my mind. The lighthouse, my sanctuary, had become a chamber of horrors, a battleground where the forces of light and darkness clashed in a tumultuous crescendo. Its walls bore the scars of our struggle, its beacon now a sentinel, casting its feeble light upon the dark waters below. As I peered out into the boundless expanse of the sea, I couldn't help but wonder if our sacrifices had been in vain. The malevolent force known as the Silent Fate had retreated, its presence no longer a palpable menace. But I knew that it lurked beneath the waves, waiting, watching. Its motivations remained inscrutable, and I was left with a haunting sense of the unknown that forever dwells beneath the sea's surface. Seawatch, too, had changed. The once tight-knit community now bore the scars of grief and terror. The villagers had lost loved ones, their cries swallowed by the merciless sea, their faces etched with the torment of loss. Our superstitions and rituals had failed to protect us, and the very fabric of our reality had been torn asunder. In the quiet aftermath, I could hear the faint echoes of our struggles, the whispers of despair, the anguished cries, the hollow laughter of the Silent Fate. It was a silence filled with echoes, a silence that spoke of horrors witnessed and unspoken. I turned my gaze upward, seeking solace in the night sky. The stars shone with a cold, distant beauty, indifferent to the suffering of our world. It was a reminder that the universe held its own secrets, its own unfathomable mysteries. As I descended the winding stairs of the lighthouse, I knew that the battle with the Silent Fate was far from over. Our lives were forever entwined with the malevolent force that dwelled beneath the waves, and the sacrifices we had made would forever echo in the silence of Seawatch. And so I remained the solitary lighthouse keeper, the guardian of our fragile existence, watching and waiting for the day when the Silent Fate would return, and the oppressive silence would once again be shattered by the screams of the damned. As this story ended, we find ourselves at the crossroads of darkness and mystery. Our journey has only just begun. If you dare to delve deeper into the realms of the unknown, if you thirst for more bone-chilling tales and heart-pounding thrills, then join our community of fearless explorers. Subscribe, like, and comment below, and together we shall uncover the secrets that lurk in the shadows. Are you ready to embrace the darkness?